All right, hello, fifth graders. This is one of our sleuth articles. It is called Man of Persistence. This is a story of Sir Ernest Shackleton. There's a couple things I want us to think about before we start reading. Here's the picture. First of all, here's some key vocabulary. Persistence is an important one. It is in the title. Persistence basically just means someone or something that keeps coming back and doing the same thing and not giving up or not stopping doing that same thing. Endurance is the ability to do something over a long period of time without stopping. And a vessel is basically anything that transports something, but in this story it is referring to boats or ships. Things I want you to think about while reading. What does it mean to be a man or woman of persistence? First line of the story says that Ernest Shackleton might be the most persistent man to ever live. What does that mean? And do you know or can you think of anybody that is very persistent in your own life, or maybe a celebrity or something? All right, let's get started reading. All right. Explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton might be the most persistent man who ever lived. On December 5th, 1914, he and 27 men set out on a ship called the Endurance. They hoped to reach the Antarctic continent and become the first people to cross land on foot. I'd encourage you to be highlighting along with me. There's some things that I highlighted. 27 men, ship called Endurance, the most important things that I'm reading. So I can look back when I'm answering the questions and know what I need to look back on. Despite the predictions of a terrible winter, Endurance left South Georgia Island, a remote island in the southern Atlantic Ocean. It headed for Vessel Bay on Antarctica. Just 2 days later, the vessel ran into a pack of ice. For the next 6 weeks, the ship wove through ice floes. On January 18, 1915, 1 day short of landing, the ship hit another thick pack ice. By the next morning, the ice had enclosed the ship. Shackleton soon realized the ship was securely stuck in the ice and would remain stuck through many long winter months. During this time, Shackleton had his crew stick to their routines and exercise the sled dogs they had brought with them. 10 months later, the crew still remained on board. In October 1915, pressure from the ice began to damage the ship and it slowly began sinking. Shackleton and his crew abandoned the ship and made camp on the surrounding ice. On November 21st, 1915, Endurance sank completely. It's a picture. Stop right here and think about what they might be able to do next, and what Ernest Shackleton might do, because he's so persistent. The crew camped on the ice for several months, and in April 1916, the ice floe broke in half, causing the crew to flee in lifeboats. Days later, they landed on Elephant Island, almost 350 miles from where the Endurance sank. Shackleton knew he had to take a drastic step, or a large, risky step, if they were ever to be rescued. Elephant Island was too remote or too far away for a rescue attempt. So a group of 6 men set off in a lifeboat for Georgia Island, where their journey had begun. The lifeboat landed on the west side of South Georgia Island in May 1916. The whaling stations, the only source of rescue, were on the east side. Shackleton and the 2 others left on foot to travel 22 miles to the nearest stations. Within 36 hours, the men had made it to a whaling station and began planning the crew's rescue. Finally, on August 30th, 1916, the crew was rescued from Elephant Island. Almost 2 years later, the ordeal was over and not one crew member had died. It was an amazing expedition with a happy ending because of one man's persistence to bring everyone home. Think back at those questions. What does it mean to be a person of persistence? Do you know someone who's very persistent? Why do you think they called Ernest Shackleton the most persistent man ever? All right, I hope that your papers are really marked up now and that you end up reading this a couple times or listening to this a couple times when you go back and do your work. Great work, you guys.